Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mary Gould, and I'm here today to introduce you to my son, Conall. This will be about his journey within statutory mental health services here in Northern Ireland, and to say my son's life was cut short due to the inadequacies of our mental health services. This is a true story. Conall was born on the 13th of April 1995. He was born in Birmingham, that's where we originally came from. He was our firstborn, he was an only son, and he was a big brother to 5 younger sisters. When he was 3, we moved our small family here to Northern Ireland for a better life. It was a good time, 1998. We had dreams, we had hopes, and we had aspirations for our children. At the age of 10, sadly, Conall was diagnosed with ADHD. He was prescribed Ritalin, but he experienced an adverse reaction to this drug, and we made a decision at that time not to give it to him. He attended a local grammar school. He was an integral part of the local community. He played Gaelic football. He also played soccer. He had many friends. He was very, very sociable. He was full of life, and our summer holidays, most years, were spent on the campsites of Europe. And Conall had so many friends. He made friends from all over the continent, and he was just such a fantastic young man. He achieved 3 grade Bs at A-level, and in 2013, he went to Queen's University in Belfast to study physics. But for Conall, maths was his love. He absolutely adored maths. So in 2014, he went back to school and retook his A-level to get a grade A in maths and continue studying at Queen's University. That same year, he joined his uncle in England. My brother is a director in Mental Health Trust for some work experience. That is not lost on me, the fact that he was working there, and that photograph does depict posters that he made about reducing health inequalities. He navigated busy motorways and made a positive impression on everybody he met. In the spring of 2016, Conall dropped out of Queen's University. He had not been attending his lectures. He'd only passed one of several exams. He was suffering with severe depression and anxiety, and even though he came home every weekend, there were no signs visibly to us of the difficulties that he was experiencing. So we didn't know that this was going on. His mental health deteriorated rapidly. He sought out a private psychiatrist. He had many visits to his GP. He had 1 course of CBT. But it all culminated on the 23rd of December 2016, when he made an attempt on his life in a family home. On the 13th of February, he was dead. He was 21 years of age. I have put together some timelines here because obviously when Conall died, I looked at his records. I wanted to see what was wrong and what had gone wrong. In the 3 years Conall was at university, he was prescribed many, many different medications. Again, we had no knowledge of this. And it culminated towards the end. It was quite a frenzy of medication. And I have no more to say on that because I found it quite unbelievable that he had been put on so many medications at such a young age. On the 19th, if anybody finds this story difficult, I don't mind if you leave, but it is real and we do live it. He was taken to accident and emergency on the 19th of January. He had taken an overdose. He was discharged in the early hours of the morning from the accident and emergency department. He had been under the care of the home treatment team in the run-up to this crisis, having daily visits. Those daily visits, I talk about them ticking boxes. There was no substance to the service that was provided, no real support to the family. And to me at that time, I recall it was more of an invasion of privacy. I didn't see the help, the difference that it was making to Conall. Conall then attended a scheduled appointment on the morning of the 20th of January after his discharge from A&E. He had actually managed to take another overdose after he'd been discharged from A&E. He was admitted then voluntarily. He never had a capacity assessment, and he had no assessment under the mental health order. He was discharged a week later. Here are some of the things that I noted once I did look over Conall's records. That the mental health care pathway was not followed. Hospital policies were not followed. NICE guidelines weren't followed. There was no risk assessment. There was no care plan. No discharge planning meeting. There was no liaison with the home treatment team. And in fact, when Conall was discharged, we expected the home treatment team to come back, but they didn't. The GP was unaware of an increase in his medication, and he died 14 days later in England. I'm just pausing there for a second to say that for me as a healthcare professional, if I myself and any of my colleagues had failed on so many points in the care that we give, and I work in maternity services, we would have very, very serious questions to answer. And to me, it is not acceptable that that level of failure is allowed to happen within the services. Following Conall's death, a serious adverse incident investigation took place. And for us, this was as traumatic as Conall's death. If that can be believed, it truly was. So many factual inaccuracies. We were excluded from the investigation. Conall's records had been amended, and records withheld from the coroner that would have changed the outcome of the inquest. The Trust were adversarial and defensive towards us as a family. And for us, they owed us a duty of care also. And to me, that duty of care was terminated when Conall died. There was no acknowledgement of the failings in the care. And they sought to blame the family for Conall's death rather than support us through the trauma. They failed to acknowledge a breach in trust in the weeks before our son's death that inevitably drove him away from the family home. Definite reputational damage limitation. The coroner did, however, issue a Regulation 28 Prevention of Future Deaths notice to the Trust. We availed of an independent expert investigation after Conall died, and one of the questions he asked was, have the Trust learned anything from Conall's tragic death? To date, and this is nearly 7 years later, the answer to that is no. I would say for us as a family, we are victims of a legacy of poor standards in mental health care. I have great concerns for other families that they will be put through this. And to think that if you haven't learnt from the failings, then how can you fix them? And how can you prevent future deaths like Conall's? Parity of standards are unequal in healthcare. As I've said, I work in maternity services. I would not expect that level of standard of care to be acceptable. Strategy after strategy, but the outcomes are worse. There's a lack of data in order to build a better service. We have found out recently that there are no numbers and no statistics, and I asked that question, how many more Conalls are there? There's a legal failure of the RQIA to regulate community mental health care for 14 years. That was following a judicial review this year. I would like to add a note to that. Whenever the RQIA took over from the Mental Health Commission in 2009, they failed to carry forward inspections of community mental health services. Conall, my son, was 14 years old then. His life had already been determined. There's a lack of accountability and there's a lack of access to justice for families when things do go wrong. And the strap lines, reach out, it's okay to not be okay, are totally meaningless if there is no support. And just to finish, I just feel that a true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. And for the young people and older people in our society, we really need to step up. Their lives should not be lost in such a manner. Our lives are forever changed, and there is no doubt about that.